Welcome to The Wing, the emotional and financial health check you never knew you needed. We provide tangible solutions for young women to build emotional health and wealth on their journey from school to motherhood. This is the podcast for young women in Australia navigating the big stuff: life, money, and motherhood. From high school to first homes, babies to bank accounts, we take you on an interactive listening journey that helps you make smart, empowered decisions every step of the way.
Hello, ladies. Welcome to another episode of The Wing. We have a returning guest, mortgage broker, mortgage whiz, general, just lovely lady, Jessie Chen. So welcome, Jessie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me again, Katie.
My absolute pleasure. Jessie and I tic-tac back and forth often, usually to do with organising loan documentation. Jessie is so bubbly and so bright and is, always on top of everything for everything that Jake and I need. So she's definitely someone who's very easy to talk to and is very, very knowledgeable. In particular, there's obviously been, so this is probably one of our more serious episodes because it is to do with what's sort of come out in the recent budget and some environmental changes and things to do with the property market, borrowing, different rules and regulations, and things that if I tried to explain them myself, I would not be able to, nor am I qualified to. So I thought, let's bring in the expert and get some intel on what's going on in the current environment, what's changed, and go from there. So Jessie, I will throw to you for our first question. So if you could explain to us and to our listeners what changed in the budget.
Yeah, no problem. I'll try to using a very simple language and hopefully that will be easier for everyone. So the budget actually introduced several changes, including the personal and business tax changes, significant reforms to the negative gearings, capital gain tax, and discretionary trusts. And also they have some adjustments to the cost of the living, superannuations, and fringe benefit tax, etc.
So lots of changes, lots of different terms and lots of different terminology and maybe concepts and rules and regulations that a lot of people may not understand. So sometimes when you can't understand the terminology, it's difficult to know what that even means. So Jessie, could you tell us a little bit more about what does the budget and what do these changes mean specifically for women?
Yeah, sure. Those changes actually impact everyone, not only for women. So for example, let's say they have one of them says $1,000 instant tax deductions for work-related expenses begins on 1st of July 2026 with no receipt required, which means you can claim in roughly up to $1,000 of the tax deductions without providing any of the receipt. Additionally, they have a permanent $250 of the tax offset for the employment or business income from 2027 to 2028 financial years. And they also have the tax changes to the investment properties, trusts, which impact the women, impact everyone who owns investment properties or who are looking to buy investment properties or running the business through the family trusts.
So lots of different elements, lots of different timelines and, things that will benefit some may not benefit others. Yeah, being able to at least then having this information to be able to take it away, whether that's to your broker or your financial planner or your accountant, to be able to figure out what these changes look like for you in your own personal circumstance, I think is really valuable. Knowing what to ask, I think.
Exactly.
Now, Jessie, what should women actually do now if there was some practical sort of takeaways, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to say at the moment. Really hard to say what we should actually do because all those changes hasn't passed through Parliament yet. What we know is this period definitely creates uncertainty. The uncertainty may change your plan for now. A lot of people might hold off buying the property. However, I really encourage everyone to stay calm, avoid panicking, and just continue monitor how the market going to be response.
Great advice. And that's the thing. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can,
No.
there are no blanket rules for everybody because everybody's situation is different. Being able to control what you can control, like you said, being able to stay calm, avoid panicking, and continue to monitor how the market responds. A lot of these changes are changes that may not be happening this financial year, but they will in years to come. Obviously, there are still a lot of variables attached to that in terms of, like the bigger picture, the bigger powers at play, like in terms of the government, and obviously different environmental factors that impact change and decisions at a higher level. So, sometimes not knowing or not having, an exact plan, maybe this is time for, a review of it. Yeah, again, conversations
Yeah,
with
definitely.
professionals like Jessie to be able to help you navigate where you're up to now and where you might want to be. Now, Jessie, a lot of the current conversation is around changes to negative gearing, capital gains tax, housing affordability, and incentives towards new builds. So, for anybody listening who tuned out during the budget or afterwards, what actually changed in the property market when it comes to borrowing?
Well, the banks are definitely shifting how they're calculating the borrowing capacities. So, for example, if you're buying investment property, brand new build-up investment properties, your borrowing power might be increased due to the negative gearing benefits. However, if you're buying established properties, you might borrow less, which might require a shift in the investment strategies.
Yes. So again, completely dependent on the type of property that you're going to buy, why you're buying the property. So is it to invest? Is it to live in? These different changes and rules and regulations will differ from situation to situation.
Exactly. And also because we are on this uncertainty environment, so everyone sort of just hold off and wait to see and what's going to happen, right?
And even that in itself can mean a number of different things. If people are, I know even Jake's experience, like he's seeing less numbers through open homes at the moment and, auction clearance rates aren't necessarily as high. And that can be a reflection on the uncertain environment because people are sort of thinking, well, hang on, I might just sit on my hands and just wait and see, which
That's right.
in itself is not necessarily a bad strategy because if you're not sure, then that's not necessarily a time to jump into something new or something with risk associated with it, which typically investing in property and accessing loans come with levels of risk. So, Jessie, can you explain the negative gearing changes in simple terms?
Yes, of course, I'll try. First of all, negative gearing means you're losing money on an investment property, but you're using that loss to pay less income tax on your day-to-day salary under the old rules. However, under the new rules, negative gearing claim is only limited exclusive to the new builds. This means that when you buy established investment properties after 12th of May 2026, from my memory, you no longer be able to deduct net rental loss against with your day-to-day salary. But you can claim that in one go when you sell this investment property. Existing investment properties held prior these changes will be grandfathered under the old rules, so no changes applies to those ones.
Thank you, Jessie. That was very explained more clearly, I think, than what has been sort of floating around news media and different publications. Again, it's hard. This is why we talk to the professionals. Jessie writes loans in and out every day. This is what she does for a living. She's seeing all sorts of different situations and being able to explain this clearly to clients, to our listeners, obviously, is critical because it can be very overwhelming when you've got all this new information and all these changes and all these different opinions and don't necessarily know how they might apply to your own situation. So, yeah. Jessie, what does the capital gains tax discussion usually mean for investors?
Yeah, no worries at all. So capital gain tax, CGT, right? So this means the death of the 50% of the CGT discount. So under the old system, if you held an investment property for longer than 12 months, the government will cut your capital gain profit in half and then apply to your personal tax rate. However, the new reality after changes is that you will be taxed 100% of your capital gain. However, your original purchase cost, which is your cost base, will be adjusted to account for the CPI inflation. You are essentially only paying tax on real profits that outpace inflation.
Again, I had to get Jake to step this one out for me as well, Jessie, because it's hard to picture it on certain, dollar amounts and things like that. And it sounds
That's right.
Overwhelming to try and figure out what this all means. But I think it certainly changes. As you said, it's not changes to anyone who already owns an investment property. But if you're coming into the market now, these are the things that you need to be aware of to make the best possible decision for yourself based on the information that you have on hand right now.
Yeah, that's right. And also a lot of people actually worry about paying more tax on it, but you only pay the tax when you're making a profit. So you definitely made a profit and then pay the tax. We can't change the old rules or new rules, but all we know is at least you made a profit on the property, isn't it?
That's right. It can be so bittersweet. Obviously, death and taxes are two things guaranteed in life. And if you make a profit, then that's usually where the tax comes in. So it's the fact that you made a profit, in the first place.
Yeah.
So, and I often have this conversation with Jake too, and it's usually around sort of April, which is when we do go through all of our previous year's tax with our accountant, and we often dread that interaction because we both go there and we're like, well, he's just going to tell us how much tax that we owe and all of this stuff. But when you look at it, if you're paying, tax is part of it, but it's not like, you're making a profit or you're making money. So paying tax is a part of that rather than viewing it through an opposite lens, which is like tax is the devil and it's it's a reflection on any success that you're having and just a part of that transaction and just fact of life.
Yeah, that's right. And also a very simple example for this one is if your boss gonna give you the pay rise, are you gonna say no to that because you're gonna pay more income tax? Or you say no to that salary increasing, right? So yeah, a lot of people panicking because of those new policies, but we just need to think in positive.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely positive and practical ways. And it's not like we're all of a sudden all going to be paying all this extra tax because that's just not the case. Yeah, we have to break it down situationally. Yeah. Jessie, are these changes going to make it harder or easier for first home buyers?
Oh, wow. Okay, so those budget changes, which removes negative gearing from investors buying established homes, are initially expecting reducing the competition at auction for first home buyers, especially those wants to buy established properties for their first home. So seems making it easier for the first home buyers. However, the complication is that existing investment properties are being grandfathered, thinking about how many of the properties on the market for sale they're held by investors. Those grandfather rules allowing the current investors to retain their favorable tax treatment. If an investor sells a grandfathered property, they're giving up their existing tax advantage. So if the investors are no longer willing to sell, this could lead to a reduction in the supply of the house on the market. If the house stock for sale shrinks, it may become more difficult for first home buyers. That's why I also said this is the uncertainty period I was talking about.
Exactly. It's that, one thing could impact like the supply and demand issue is, there's, buying established homes from now as investments is not necessarily the best tax advantage as an investor, but as first home buyer, that looks different. And as you said, if you've already got an investment property and you've got the grandfathered arrangement on that with the tax variables, people aren't necessarily going to want to give that up. They're not going to want to sell those properties. So it's that fluctuation in the market. Again, like you said, it's the uncertainty. It's the not knowing how is this actually going to play out, and not too dissimilar to any other, I guess, key period of time. And one that comes to mind in particular is the season of COVID, so that for the property market obviously ended up that was sort of unprecedented or unwalked territory for a lot of people. And it was a good thing in a lot of ways because people were getting the demand was really high. So people were getting a lot more money for their properties, perhaps comparatively to a standard, a normal kind of market flow or situation. But that also meant that if they were selling to buy, they're still purchasing in that higher sort of market. So, but we didn't know that until COVID was sort of, months into that journey and understanding what that all actually looked like. And it's only in hindsight that we're able to reflect on that and see and sort of package that up in a bow and see how that went. And, as we're recording this, it's not even mid-June, and the budget, we're basically a month out from when the budget was announced. So it's too early to know what it looks like next. And that's why we're sitting in that uncertainty period currently.
That's right. And you're absolutely right as well. So for even thinking about the COVID period you were talking about, all those property prices increasing by $100,000, $200,000 all of a sudden, that's the uncertainty people are getting as well. Should I buy the property or should I hold off? But after the COVID, what happened? Everything back on the normal and people are now still buying the properties. I think we just need to keep in calm and not panicking.
Yeah, not panic buy, not panic sell, and evaluate your situation as it is and there's so many different factors, right? There's your income and your salary, any investments you already have or don't have, family planning, job changes, business investments, there are travel plans. There's so many different things that factor into big decisions that need to be made. So being able to zero in on your own situation and not be thrown so much by all of what can be very overwhelming information online or on the news. So yeah, it's a good reminder, Jessie.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, if females in their 20s or 30s currently feel behind when it comes to property investing and the current environment, what would you tell them?
Well, first you need to know that you actually are not late. So you are not missed out the boat. You not missed the boat. Yes, it seems like all those changes from the budget are not very friendly to the investors and you're not quite sure whether you should investing or not investing. However, over the last 10 years, for example, the national capital gain was with an annual growth rate of 5.61%. Furthermore, the national median house value has increased by average of 6.8% per annum over the last 25 years. Although you may pay more tax on the profit under the new rules, but the capital growth from holding investment property long term is what drives the returns. So the property investment actually is a long-term game. Being your 20 years or your 30 years means you have 3 or 4 decades ahead. Benefit from compounding the market growth. You have more time to holding those property and making a profit.
A great perspective, I think, Jessie, too. It's easy to feel overwhelmed or behind or like we're not doing enough in, the 20s and 30s sort of age brackets. But being able to zoom out on that and look at things long term and knowing that, like you said, property investing is a long-term gain. You're not going to find any quick wins in the property investing field at all, nor should you expect that. So having that nice reminder that if you are in your 20s or 30s and you're feeling behind or you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't necessarily need to feel that way. I think, ladies, as well, being able to, and I've spoken about this before and I'm a big believer in this, and I've spoken to it earlier, even just on this podcast, but being able to put the right professional services in your corner and build a team around you. It's not up to any individual or any one of us to know everything about everything. It's about being able to identify the right professional resources that you might need depending what journey you're going on. If it is a property journey, a great place to start is actually having a conversation with a mortgage broker like Jessie, who understands all of these changes. She is an expert in her field, and she's going to be the only person that's going to be able to assess your situation and work out where you are right now and where you need to be or where you want to be and how do you actually get there. She's going to be able to understand more about your income, your current investments if you have any, and if you don't, it doesn't matter, that's not necessarily a roadblock for you. She's going to be able to help you navigate your borrowing capacity and figure out a bit of a timeline. If you're having a conversation early, if you're just not sure and you're like, oh, this is too much, having a little conversation like that with Jessie in the first instance is often a really good place to start because you're going to know or get a better idea at least on where you're at right now and what you need to do to get ahead or get in front. And if the time for you isn't right now, and it is a case of, hey, let's have another conversation in 6 or 12 months, then at least you've got that bit of information, and it might actually help if you are feeling behind, that you've at least taken one small step in the right direction to at least get an understanding of where you are and where you might want to be.
That's right.
Jessie, what are the most practical property and or borrowing moves that women can make in the next 12 months?
As I mentioned before, this is a period of the market uncertainty, and the full market response actually is not yet visible. So what I'm thinking is really maintaining a positive and proactive mindset is very essential. We know that the lenders might adjust and, updating their borrowing power policies, and the market can experience a significant shift in directions. But as long as we're keeping closely monitoring the market, make sure that you're on the position to acting on the next great opportunity, I think that's all we need to do for the next 12 months' time.
And honestly, Jessie, I think that's just brilliant life advice in general, being able to maintain a positive and proactive mindset. I think having that type of mindset is what's going to drive any kind of investment strategy at any stage of life anyway. And again, not panicking, staying calm, and then making sure, that you're in the best possible position to be able to make informed decisions when the time is right.
Yes.
Now, Jessie, look, I've skewed this in a female perspective, and I know you have a beautiful little son, but I've changed the wording in my question to ask Jessie, but I think it's advice just for anybody with kids, boys or girls. But if you were to give some advice, to your son or daughter about starting from scratch financially, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say my son is definitely very naughty. So my original thinking is have a daughter. So when I feel, it's talking about something else now. When I feel pregnant and I find out it's a boy, I basically say to my husband, says, I don't know how to deal with this little one. Like I never expecting to have a boy, but I think 10 years I'm finally getting there. Yeah, but back to your topic. If I have a beautiful daughter, start from scratch financially. And what's the advice I want to give into her? First of all, disclaimer, I'm not a financial planner. I can't give you that advice. But I think what I will tell her or tell him is the wealth is built through a systemized habit. It's not luck. Like you're not going to be wish you buy a property today and then tomorrow that become $500,000 more in value. So that's called lucky, right? Build up your emergency funds and having a saving habit. That's first of all, right? So you need to have some funds sitting there to cover for your emergency and have a very good saving habit as well. I think secondly, invest in yourself is the very important one. Focus on learning some high value skills to grow your salaries and increasing your borrowing powers with the bank. I think that potentially can give you the future opportunity for investment as well. You just need to prepare. You need to savings. You need to prepare to make sure that when that opportunity comes and you not let that go. So that I think that's all the advice I can give into them.
Absolutely. I think, Jessie, just quickly on our other topic, similar to you, I feel like my girls, I feel like, oh, yeah, no, I think I can deal with this. When it comes to our son, I'm like, I bet he's only 2, so I'm at least 8 years behind you on that one. I'm like, I don't know how to deal with him. I always feel
jealous when I see someone has a beautiful girl and they're just quiet. They're not that naughty. And when you're talking to them, their voice is like really soft. And it's like, oh my God, she's a little girl. But boys are totally different. I'm sure you experience that now.
Absolutely.
Or you will be.
Yes. Yeah, definitely seeing their different quirks and their different ways of doing things, or the fact that we baby proofed the house to a certain degree after we had our first daughter, but the amount of baby proofing we have had to do since having our son is we've not done any kind of renovation yet, but we've made major changes just to protect him from himself.
Oh wow. They're going to change a lot. You need renovations to do that changes now.
That's right. Don't worry, Jessie. We'll be reaching out to you for another loan if we need to do that.
Hopefully not going to be huge changes.
Yeah,
You already had a beautiful house.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully, yeah. For now, it's just removing all the hazards, and yeah. Anyway, he is the hazard, but yeah. So anyway, I know you understand, Jessie. What I was going to ask you as well. So when we're talking about this, had me curious because obviously we knew what we were going to talk about today, and I've just been thinking about it a lot before today's recording. When you're talking about savings habits, so the thing that comes to mind for me is, and I remember doing this when I was a teenager. I remember I'd left school, I was renting, I was planning an overseas trip with a friend of mine, and I was on a very, very not great salary. Obviously, I was, new to it was my very first office job. It was my first job out of school. I was at uni as well, I'm pretty sure. And yes, I was. And I look back now and I think, how on earth did I actually afford to do what I did? But I was thinking back and I thought, I remember writing every week I'd get paid and I would write down how much I got paid. I knew that. And then I would, subtract out my rent and then have a certain amount for savings. And I feel like that at the time was a habit for me because whether it was an automatic transfer to savings. And I'm terrible with money, and I'm definitely not recommending that anyone takes a leaf out of my book in that instance. But when I was thinking about what's a savings habit, I thought, maybe that was an example of a savings habit. And then I totally kind of fell away with those habits. I did the trip and I think I ended up moving house anyway. Or I think I moved back home with my parents for a bit. So the rent went away and, life just kind of happened. And then my savings habits never really sort of came back in a positive way. But do you have some examples of what a saving habit could be in practical terms?
Yeah, definitely. I think I built up this. I was thinking when I was looking back to when I was young, I also very, very terrible on savings. I always thinking about if I want this thing, I need to buy that now because if I wait for, let's say 2 years later, I go back and looking at this thing, this is not my age anymore. So for example, it's a beautiful clothes, I have to buy it, I buy it, right? So it's really, really bad. But reality is I spent the money, but I'll look back 2 years ago when I purchased all those silly stuff, those things are not for you. So now I think the best way for savings is once you're getting the salary paid, you put the money in your bank account and you test it out for the first few months and to see how much that's going to cost you on the necessarily lifestyle. When I say necessarily lifestyle is including, let's say, food, groceries, petrol, all those things you have to living on. Any of the other things, beautiful clothes, handbags, or toys or anything you're thinking that's not necessarily as part of your groceries or those things, put them on the side for maybe 1 month or 2. And then have a look how much you're spending. You work out how much you have to spend, then that's the leftover money. You absolutely can, giving yourself a savings, let's say to saving up for a jewelries or for handbag. You working out, let's say $200 on the side every single month, and 6 months later you can have that one. And in that way, this is also good opportunity for you to thinking about 6 months before you actually spending that money. If 6 months later you don't need it, then that's extra money for you to spend it on your holidays or your next project, right?
Yes, great advice. And it's almost like it comes down to your thinking, right? So it comes down to retraining your mindset. So rather than making an impulse buy or an impulse decision, it's human nature to want different things and plan for the future and have goals and things like that. And in the example of, okay, if that is a handbag and I want that now, we'll sit with that idea for 6 months and continue your savings and tucking money away as much as you can outside of your everyday expenses. And then in 6 months' time, look back on that. And who knows, by then it's probably almost certain that the craving or the want for that handbag has probably disappeared completely and you don't end up buying it in the end anyway.
That's right. And that's, as you said, that's all about mindset as well. Don't getting any of the afterpays, zip pay, all those things, because those one encourage you to spend the money right now when you don't have that money. So those absolutely the bad thing. To me, I think that's a bad thing because when you're spending it, even let's say 4 weeks later, you don't want it, you already pay for it. You have to pay the money back. So Another
It
good
is.
way to saving is never getting the afterpay.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jessie, because it's encouraging impulse buying behaviors because it's like
Yeah.
it's so easy to purchase on those apps. And actually, I have a question which is a little off topic, but I will ask it while I have you, Jessie.
Yeah.
If you have apps like Zip Pay and Afterpay and any other kind of immediate pay without having the cash there, and I guess
Yeah.
maybe it falls into the same category as credit cards in different
Mhm.
situations,
Yeah.
but are those things that would limit someone's ability to borrow money for an investment?
Yeah. Okay. So this one is down to the lender's policies because a lot of people may thinking, okay, so that's an afterpay. Like if I don't tell the bank won't find out. But it's 2026. Lender can see absolutely everything, right? So some of the lenders will treat in the afterpay, zip pay there as credit facilities. So if you have a limit of the $1,000 of the afterpay limit, they will treat in that as a credit card, so which potentially reducing your borrowing power. But some of the lenders, they understanding afterpay works slightly different with your credit cards because when you made a purchase, you have to pay that back in full installment. So as long as you owing $0 on it, there's no future payment. Some of the lender will ignore it. So if you're not quite sure, always talking to us, talking to, bankers and make sure that you know this lender's policy, this lender you want to go with.
Interesting. Yes. Okay. So, and again, it comes back to that mindset. And ultimately, if you can shift your mindset and stay away from apps like that in the first place, then you're not even going to need to navigate that when it does come to borrowing. But being able to, think longer term, like you said, Jessie, I wish I had that advice when I was 18 and trying not to impulse buy or maybe, I don't know. It's very complex and the way we all think about money is very different. I did record a podcast, actually just a solo one on money blueprints, which is something that's very interesting. And I think everybody should have an understanding of what their money blueprint is, because that's actually it has everything to do with how you were raised and what money felt like for you and your family growing up, and what money feels like for you now, what money was like for your partner growing up, and how you come together on that, or individual, like whatever the situation may be. So if you have an understanding on what your money blueprint is, how you think about money, how you think about wealth building, what do these words mean for you, and how do you treat money right now, those things are what's going to impact your ability to save, your saving habits, your forward thinking, your forward planning, and then how you access different resources to get you into a spot where you're going to be able to achieve those future goals if that's something that you're after. And being able to have someone like Jessie in your corner as your mortgage broker, she's going to be able to give you a honest and valid assessment on where you are now and where you need to be. And then, looking at what other resources you need to plug into that. Having a really good accountant, I know, has been absolutely fundamental for Jake and I to understand, where money needs to be at certain times, or where, how to, better access different tax benefits and things like that along the way. So without resources like Jessie and our accountant and now our financial planner, we'd be so in the dark about everything. And honestly, we've probably only really plugged in these resources properly in the last sort of 5 or so years. Jake probably sooner than I did. But now together as a couple, it's been sort of 5 years of really knuckling down and listening to the professionals to make sure that the decisions that we make are based with the top amount of knowledge. And there is absolutely no guesswork from Jake and I, or a minimal amount of guesswork. Like obviously with different investments, there's always a level of risk that we do ultimately have to decide on if it's worth it or not. But we have these professionals in our corner to give us the information so we can make informed decisions. So
I just want to say those podcasts just amazing. Like I really wish when I'm at 20 years, I have your podcast can, light up a lot of the way for the other people and for their financial decision as well. And there's just so many industry that if you don't listen to the podcast, you don't know them, right? Even for me, like it's very freshly for me to find out all those financial planners job. And there's a different bond investment method they were talking about. Like, for me, I put all my money into the properties. That's all I know. That's I do good, right? But after talking to the financial planners, I find out there's so many other ways to build up your portfolio. So I think that's really amazing.
Absolutely. And same, Jessie, like I feel like thank you for saying that, because that is obviously my goal, to make sure that there's information that's readily available in one place, obviously targeted at young women that are trying to navigate, life, money and motherhood, whether that's at separate times or all at the one time. All right, before we wrap the episode, Jessie, I might throw to you, and if you can just recap for the audience a little bit about, where are you? We know you're Loan Market, Jessie Chen from Loan Market, but where can our listeners find you, and how would they go about having a conversation with you if they want to?
Yeah, no worries at all. If you Google Loan Market Canberra, you can find us. And my name is Jessie from Loan Market Canberra. We're helping a lot of our clients for the first home buyers, investors, or even some of the clients coming from the financial planners. They want to buy shares. They have a property. We also can helping them to do some equity loans as well. So if you have any questions on this side, feel free to reach us out and giving us a call, and we can help you from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessie. And as I said, Jessie, and as you can see and hear today, Jessie is a very friendly, approachable lady, and she will always have your best interests at heart. And that goes out to the entire Loan Market team. They are based all across the country as well. So if you're looking, interstate, or if you are listening from interstate and you need recommendations, we're happy to point you in the right direction. But for now, we will let Jessie get back to writing loans and doing what she does best. Well, it's one of the many things Jessie does brilliantly. Obviously, being a guest on the podcast is one of the things she does brilliantly too. So
thank you.
No worries at all. All right, ladies.
Katie.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode of The Wing. Bye-bye.
Enjoyed the episode? Hit follow and check out _wingpod Oz on Instagram for a dose of wisdom getting you on the right path to success.